Welcome back to my video today. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's jump right in. Alan has always been a devoted wife to Cedric, her husband. They've been married for 7 years. One day, while Cedric is away on a business trip, Alan meets an old college friend whom she once loved deeply but couldn't be with. His name is James Allen. She starts meeting James secretly when Cedric is away. She feels guilty about her betrayal but can't resist her attraction to her old lover. Cedric notices strange signs in Alan's behavior. She often goes out in the evenings, saying she's meeting friends, but never mentions it. After he gets back home, he starts to have doubts. Instead of acting rashly, Cedric decides to keep an eye on her. He watches as Cedric gets ready for a long business trip, but he feels like something is off. Alan's actions and words lately have made him feel like something is. Every time she smiled or talked naturally, he felt a pang in his heart. It was as if he was gradually losing the wife he once loved. The night before his business trip, Cedric couldn't sleep. Thoughts about Alan's change and her possible secrets made him feel uneasy. He knew he needed to do something. He wanted to verify the truth, but he didn't want to confront her directly in case it ruined what was left of their marriage. In the chaos of his thoughts, he had an idea: put a mini camera in the room to monitor Len. He wouldn't have to confront her immediately, but at least he'd know. If there was anything going on behind his back. The next day before going to the airport, Cedric went to a tech store and bought a mini camera. He chose a compact one that could connect to his phone so he could monitor remotely at any time when he got home. Cedric secretly installed the camera in the corner of the room. Cedric installed the camera in the living room and bedroom, where Alan spent most of his time. He didn't tell anyone about it, not even his close friends, because he didn't want anyone to know about his insecurities. After the installation, Cedric went on a business trip, but his mind was on the images that the camera would record. The morning began. The sun was shining through the window, but Cedric's heart wasn't at peace. He prepared everything for the business trip, with his suitcase neatly placed by the door. Alan was still sleeping, looking peaceful as if she didn't know about the chaotic thoughts that had been haunting Cedric for the past few days. Cedric looked at his wife one last time before quietly stepping out of the room, letting her continue sleeping before leaving the house. He glanced at his phone, where the camera app was already running. He picked up his suitcase, took a deep breath and walked out the door. He tried to act as normal as usual. The trip from home to the airport was quite long. When he arrived at the airport, he stayed there for the night. His flight was only until tomorrow. Cedric went to the hotel, checked in and threw himself on the bed. Instead of resting, he opened his phone and checked the camera app again. Everything seemed normal. In the hotel room, Cedric was trying to get some sleep but couldn't rest. Then, he heard a notification sound on his phone. He was startled and reached for his phone, opening the camera app. The image that appeared made him stun. His hand shook so much that he almost dropped the phone. On the screen was a Cedric had never imagined. Elon was in the room, and a strange man had just entered. He was so surprised that he almost held his breath as the man approached. He hugged her from behind and they began to exchange affectionate glances. Cedric was so shocked that his heart instantly shattered. His eyes were glued to the screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The scene he thought was just a vague speculation was now happening right before his eyes. Alan didn't resist. She accepted the man naturally, as if they'd been used to this for a long time. Every action, every affectionate gesture made Cedric feel like a knife was stabbed in his heart. Cedric couldn't take his eyes off the screen. The scene became clearer, making his heart feel like it was being squeezed. The man gently guided Alan onto the bed, each intimate gesture showing that they had long since crossed the line. Cedric felt every passing second like a knife stabbing deep into his heart. His pride and trust were tested as the man slowly removed Alan's clothes. She didn't resist, she responded to those gestures with ease and familiarity. Everything that happened before Cedric's eyes was like a nightmare that he never thought he would have to face. Despite his heartbreaking, he tried to stay calm. He didn't let his emotions overwhelm him. Instead, he decided to record the entire scene as undeniable evidence of Alan's betrayal. With trembling but determined hands, he turned on the screen recording function. He recorded every second of Alan and the other man having sex. Pieces still tried to stay calm. He didn't let his emotions get the better of him. Instead, he decided to record the entire scene as undeniable evidence of Alan's betrayal. With trembling but determined hands, Cedric turned on the screen recording function on his phone, recording every second of Alan and the other man having sex. The sex was betraying him. He was no longer a loving and trusting man, but a betrayed husband needing to prepare everything to protect himself. Cedric took notes and collected evidence after recording everything. He turned off his phone and sat there, his emotions too complicated to explain in words. Cedric decided to cancel the flight he'd prepared for work. He couldn't face going in, feeling so betrayed and hurt. He didn't inform anyone, just quietly booked the new flight home in the middle of the night when the sky was light. Cedric arrived at the front door of his house. His heart was beating fast as he stood in front of the door that had once been his haven. He quietly unlocked the door and entered, taking care not to make a noise. The house was strangely quiet, with no signs of anything unusual. Cedric walked through the living room and headed to Cedric opened the bedroom door and went in. He was still thinking about what had happened the night before, so he was surprised to see that the man was no longer there. Alan woke up when he saw Cedric standing there. Alan was taken aback by her reaction. Her eyes were wide with panic, and her voice trembled as she asked why he had returned so soon and why he hadn't gone on a business trip anymore. He tried to keep his composure, but he could tell she was uneasy. Cedric didn't answer right away. He stood there, silent, staring at Len as if he was trying to calm down. His mind was filled with the images he had seen through the camera the night before. Now, standing in front of him, was the wife he had once trusted. But she had betrayed him in an unforgivable way. "I have something to do," Cedric said, each word ringing out like a knife. "I want to show you a video I collected while I was at the hotel." Cedric looked straight into Len's eyes, not hiding his anger and disappointment. Alan felt her heart pounding, fear starting to creep into her veins. She didn't know what was waiting for her, but the feeling of unity was growing stronger, trying to keep her cool. She asked, "What did you collect?" Her voice was shaking, and she seemed panicked and unsure of what would happen next. Cedric opened his phone and scrolled to the video of the scene from the night before. He didn't say another word as he opened the Cedric put the phone in front of Alan and the images started to appear on the screen. Alan saw herself in the video with the other man, both of them naked and making out. She froze, her whole body, heart pounding in her chest. Alan couldn't believe what was happening before her eyes. She felt panic and she felt a rush of guilt. "I don't want to see any more," she said, her voice trembling and full of worry. She avoided looking at the screen, trying to distance herself from the painful reality that was unfolding. But Cedric wouldn't let her off the hook that easily. He stood in front of her, cold, and he was unwavering in his refusal to look away. His voice was deep and full of hurt, as if he was trying to make her think that she could just turn away and everything would go away. He said, "You betrayed me and I saw everything." Alan bowed her head, not daring to look Cedric in the eye. His words were like a knife stabbing deep into her heart. She didn't know how to handle the emotions that were coming up for her. "I don't know what to say," she stammered, her eyes red with worry and guilt. "I'm sorry, Cedric. I really don't know what happened to me." Cedric chuckled bitterly. "You don't know, then let me remind you. You've welcomed another man into this house, into our bed. I did it thinking you'd never know." "Cedric, listen to me." Alan tried to defend herself. Her voice was full of pleading, her eyes full of worry and guilt. She moved closer to Cedric, trying to find a way to justify her actions and salvage what little trust she had left. "It was just a mistake. It was a mistake. I don't know why it happened. I can't explain it, but I love you, Cedric. Please believe me." Cedric stood still, his eyes cold and hard. He looked at AOW, and with bitterness, the pain in his heart seemed indescribable. Listen to me. He repeated, his voice low and determined. The evidence is so clear that there's no need to explain anymore. I saw it all. This wasn't just a mistake, Cedric said. It was a betrayal. You broke everything. The truth was obvious, and no apology or excuse could undo what she had done. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Elon said, her voice breaking. Cedric also knew that her apology was too late. He cut Alan off, his voice cold and determined. I don't want to hear anything else. You have to leave. Get up and pack your things. Get out of my house. Elin was stunned and unable to. She was shocked by the cruelty in Cedric's voice. She felt completely disoriented. Cedric, please don't do this. She cried out in despair, tears beginning to fall. But her plea only made him more determined. I gave you too many chances, he said in a low but heavy voice. But now there's nothing left. You've broken everything, and I can't forgive you. Leave this house now, Elon. She was completely lost in despair, had nothing left to hold on to. All apologies, all pleas were meaningless. Alan slowly stood up, her legs weighed down by pain and regret. She walked towards the door, knowing it was over. She opened the door and stepped outside, a feeling of emptiness washing over her. Alan knew there was no turning back, no second chances. Everything she and Cedric had, everything they had been through together, was now just fragments of a broken relationship that could not be repaired.